So as someone that's been through a divorce, or someone that is divorced or getting divorced, obviously the idea of getting involved in a new relationship eventually will come up. And it's either something that you want now, something that you desire in the future, or something that you, perhaps given what may have happened in your previous relationship, maybe something that you no longer actually want, and maybe you're looking for a bit of space, which is just fine. And actually, I think that's probably the best starting point for most people. I think to provide yourself with an opportunity to have some space, to have a moment to properly heal, and to have a moment of actual accountability for your part in the relationship. Now, what I'm not saying, and I must say very clearly, that if you have been involved in a relationship where you've been in any way abused, I'm not asking for you to now, as the victim, look at the reasons why you're a victim, not at all. But what I am saying is that for a relationship that has just gone wrong, I think it's important that as individuals, we look at our own part in that. One of the things that came up quite quickly for me was that you can be very good people, but you can also not be good together. And so whilst, again, you might have had a really good relationship at some point, obviously something's broken down to stop that from being the case. And so I think accountability is a really good starting point, because if you're able to be accountable for your part in it, what that means is when you now are looking to move into a new relationship, you won't necessarily be bringing the same version of you to this relationship. Now, that's not to say that the version of you that you currently are is a problem, or the version of you that you were in that previous relationship is a problem. I don't think that's true necessarily. However, you have to start to look slightly deeper into your own behaviors and your own actions during that relationship, and perhaps look at and identify what you have done on your part that may have led to the breakdown of that relationship. Now, this is not for everyone, in that it's very difficult to honestly reflect on your own behavior and call out the bad parts of it. Like, that's quite a difficult thing, and it's quite a mature thing to do, but I think it's actually essential to, like, moving on in a healthy way. It's not, now what is important to understand about this part of the process is it's not to condemn yourself or to kind of assume blame or guilt at all. That's counterproductive. But what it is it's just to say, look, these were the moments, these were the things that I probably didn't get right, and that's okay, we make mistakes, but these are the things that I didn't get right. These are the things that I perhaps was unhappy with, and the things that, you know, I understood my partner was unhappy with at the time, but it was just the way I was, or whatever. But I think, again, to have this sense of kind of self-checking yourself is really, really important. And I think that is something that must, you know, be an ongoing process, even when you do get into a new relationship. It's very, very important that you kind of check yourself, because the bottom line is that no one's perfect. And so you can't, one, expect your new partner or your ex-partner to have been perfect, and likewise, they can't expect you to be perfect, and it wouldn't be right for anyone to do so. So from that perspective, understanding no one's perfect and that people do make mistakes, you have to also, therefore, secondary to assessing your own behavior, you have to be forgiving of it. It's really, really important. And forgiveness, man, when it comes to divorce, forgiveness is a big thing. And it's twofold, because you will need to forgive yourself for some stuff, right? If you're honest. And it's not to say that you've done anything massive, but just, again, if you're able to really be accountable, you might need to forgive yourself for some stuff. But obviously, as you're aware, it takes two, right? And so therefore, you will also need to have a real sensitivity and a high level of forgiveness for your ex-partner. That's really, really important. And I say that particularly if you've got children, because children mean that you are essentially going to be in each other's lives for the rest of your lives, and therefore you're gonna be interacting forever. So it's kind of like, at that point in time, you've got to ask yourself, is it useful for me to hang on to the offense that has occurred to me? Is it useful? Because what I will say is that you don't necessarily have to forget. Forgiveness and forgetting are two very different things. If you steal my wallet, I can forgive you for it, but it's probably the last time I'm going to leave my wallet around you, right? And so the same thing can be applied to your ex-partner. You don't have to forget what they've done, and you don't necessarily have to get back to a place where you're even friends, but you have to forgive oftentimes, because forgiveness starts with you. It starts at home, and it's actually relieving yourself of the anger and the resentment and whatever else that's kind of mixed up with those feelings. It enables you to clear your mind of that, clear your heart of that, and actually be freer to move on. And I would say in this instance, it would also enable you to start a relationship in a far better place. One of the things I've seen so many times is when two people get together after having had a breakup, and what's actually brought them together is their negativity for their ex-partners, right? Living in that kind of mindset where I've been hard done by, understandable, but when you meet someone else in that same situation, what's actually happening is you're bringing together two negative things that drew you to each other because you were a sense of comfort for the other person. The problem is that long term, that's not the basis of a healthy relationship, to have had mutual negativity necessarily, unless of course you actively turn that into a positive outcome. But for the most part, people don't operate that way. And so when they get together too soon with someone and they've still got this issue with their ex-partner and haven't necessarily forgiven, that can then also leak into your new relationship. And it's I promise you, it's something that you just don't want. It would probably be, in today's society, classed as a toxic thing to do. So it would just make sense for you to forgive, heal, and then I would say that you're probably in a better suited place to now meet someone. That being said, I would say if you are single and you're raising kids, take the time to be single. Now, if you've been single for like 5 years and you're like, I'm sick of this, understandably, that's going to feel like a little bit different to the person who's just separated. But I would say it's a real opportunity for you to not only enjoy your own freedom and your own time and not having to necessarily be accountable to someone else, but it's a real opportunity to like work on yourself, like really find things that are you. And I would also say that if you're single and looking for someone, which I don't really endorse as such, I think it's better to kind of like find someone than look for someone, if that makes sense. What I would say to start with is to invest yourself in things that you like to do, and from that, ideally those things lead to communal involvement in things. So, clubs, activities, hobbies, and things which actually bring you to the same space multiple times a month, if not a week, and therefore interacting with similar faces and therefore building community. I would say that's actually one of the most powerful ways to meet somebody, right? Because you're starting to engage in things that you actually want to do and actually enjoy, and now you're going to be, by extension, meeting new people because of it. And you could in theory meet the next person that you are going to be with. Now, it doesn't stop there, because that it doesn't just work that way. You won't just go to your new dance club and meet your partner on day one. But what I will say is that this idea of meeting someone, it's kind of like you're supposed to be personable. You're supposed to meet people, and by meeting people, you meet someone. Right? But thinking you can just go out and meet the one is just ridiculous. You've got to go and meet people, be a part of a community. This is why I'm always endorsing community, because join a community, that community has a community. And if you make friends, if you make a relationship with someone within that community, then they open you up to their wider community. And again, you can therefore meet people through them as well. So it's just kind of the idea of being more sociable, which I think is really, really useful before you decide to go and, find a partner. Something I want to identify here as well, and I think this goes rightfully so perhaps, but it is a bit of a weird one. When you are in a long-term relationship with someone, for the most part, you often find that you start to lose friends and friendships with members of the opposite sex, right? In that, particularly in a relationship for me, I didn't have many friendships with women during my marriage. And I think that's kind of like, it is rightfully positioned in that, you're supposed to have a really tight relationship with your partner. And I understand that it can lead to jealousy and why are you guys so close? Why do you speak so often? And all of those kind of things. So it is rightfully placed, but I also think that there is a real opportunity in singleness to actually have and host meaningful relationships with the opposite sex. I've got sisters and I've got daughters and nieces, and a mother and, and aunties. And so I've always very much been, and cousins, I've always very much been surrounded by a lot of women anyway, but to actually build and have an opportunity to find meaningful relationships with women has just been incredible, and to find like safe spaces to enjoy the differences and the similarities with women outside of pursuing a romantic relationship has just been amazing. So I would recommend that as well. It's probably a good opportunity if you are single to go and find some friends. And the interesting thing about that is that if you find friends of the opposite sex, the likelihood is that they have friends that may be single. And again, if you're a good person and they like you and you've generally got a connection, why wouldn't they want to introduce you to someone that they also have a connection with and think is a good person? So there are other methods of meeting people, right, and getting involved in relationship that don't necessarily mean you're lining yourself up to be in one. I think if you line yourself up to be in one, like you'll find one, but you'll find one based on the wrong things, right? The need for a relationship is often what I think damages relationships, because you're essentially, if you need someone, right, this is the kind of the picture that we get of bringing, the idea that you bring two halves together to make a whole. That's needing someone, right? But a healthy relationship is based on, I think, wanting someone. The need can come, but I think that the one is, I bring a whole version of myself to the table, you bring a whole version of yourself to the table, and two wholes actually make a whole, and a healthy relationship. And relationships obviously change as people do, so referring to them constantly as healthy versus non-healthy or toxic or whatever isn't always helpful, because they do change. But what it is it's like actively trying to be in a place where you are in a healthy relationship, because obviously that's what's good for you. So just to conclude, I would say, if you're in that place where you're perhaps lacking intimacy and understandably you feel like you want someone around, I would just say be careful of how you fill that void and who you fill that void with, because if you have that need, it can be exploited. And I think that's the dangerous place for a lot of people, where they present the need to someone who doesn't actually genuinely want them, but understands they have a need and can exploit them for that, for a time. So just be mindful of that, and slow down, slow down. Get involved in community, get involved with being personable and speaking to people more frequently. If you're not used to that, then just start to say hello to people more frequently. Honestly, it changes the game. If you go from saying hello to hi, how are you, and then adapting more meaningful conversations with people throughout your week, you'd be surprised at how personable you have become and how easy it now is for you to engage with someone that you may well be attracted to. And so, yeah, I would just say, be mindful, be patient, and just be open to the fact that this is an opportunity for you to work on you, develop your internal self, develop your whole self, and for you to have an opportunity to really enjoy your individuality.